looking forward to Christmas. Last week we looked forward to hope. This week we're going to look forward to peace. Hope, peace, joy, love. Those are the main Advent themes for each Sunday or week throughout the Advent season. And so we looked at hope. Now we're going to look at peace. And we looked at Isaiah chapter 40 last week. We're going to backtrack just a little bit to prophecies in Isaiah chapter 8. And really, there's a lot involved in those first few chapters of Isaiah. They are kind of set the tone for him as a prophet, set the tone for what God was doing in their time, and he gives them some gloom and doom stuff out of this. But in chapter 8, and then ultimately in chapter 9, we're going to look at today, he begins to share with them something positive or something that is prophetic that they can truly look forward to. So let's begin. Chronologically, as I said, this passage would be before Isaiah 40 that we looked at last year. It's a time when, if you know a little bit about history, ancient history, there was conflict in the area. Israel was always kind of caught in between the superpowers of Egypt and the Babylonians, the Syrians and the Assyrians to the north. And so then here was the split of the top, or the 10 tribes who were in the top, or the northern part of the kingdom. And then there was the southern tribes who were Judah and Benjamin in the southern part of the kingdom of Israel. And so there was a time when they knew the Assyrians were coming. They had conquered the Babylonians. They were coming. No. That was before the Babylonians conquered them. I'm sorry, I told you wrong. And so they knew they were coming. And Syria, as well as Israel in the north, they had made a kind of coalition together to stand against the Syrian leader, Tiglath-Pileser was his name. We just called him Pul, P-U-L. That's a lot. He was Tiglath-Pileser the third. Can you imagine being the third tagged with that name? No. But Pul was what they called him. And he was on his way, and he was going to attack. And ultimately, the northern kingdom, as well as the Syrians, fell to him. And so he was coming to put pressure on them. They wanted Judah to join them in a kind of a coalition to fight against him. And Ahaz was king, and Ahaz, he wasn't about to seek godly counsel, even though Isaiah told him to. He wasn't going to join that. He was going to basically thought he could fend for himself. Well, read a lot about Ahaz, and you'll figure out he wasn't going to cooperate with anybody except for whatever Jezebel told him to do. But anyway, so here we are, and we get into then chapter 8, and if there is no God, then there is no peace, is there? And so this is kind of the summary of what the prophet is saying in this passage. He tells Ahaz. I'm sorry, I got Ahab and Ahaz confused too. Boy, not going to be a good day for me, is it? Not off to a good start here. He's going to tell Ahaz the king, go to God's instructions and testimony. If they do not speak according to his word, there will be no dawn for them. They will wander through the land dejected and hungry. When they are famished, they will become enraged, and looking upward will curse their king and their God. They will look toward the earth and see only distress, darkness, and the gloom of affliction, and they will be driven into thick darkness. So in that passage, that's pretty gloomy sounding, isn't it? It's pretty negative. And if we just look at it a little deeper, we'll see the prophet said there is no peace where there is no God. He rejected the message of warning. He rejected a call to faith. Ahaz did, and he just pretty much told the prophet he wasn't going to seek God at all. And so the prophet says, go to God's instruction and testimony. If you don't consult God, if you don't listen to God, um, there's not going to be any light. There's not going to be any dawn for your people. There's darkness coming, and it's going to be pretty bad. He says they'll wander through the land dejected and hungry. That means there's going to be famine. And then it says, when they're famished, they will become enraged, and looking upward, they will curse their king and their God. Isn't that kind of what happens? Is if there's a problem, it must be political, and we're gonna go to the establishment, we're gonna go to the government, we're gonna say it's your fault. You got us in the mess we're in. You put us where we are. Well, that's kind of sounds familiar in some ways, doesn't it? That here we are in this mess, and it's because you did not seek God. It's because you did not um, follow Him and obey Him. You can't get light from a source that has no light, can you? And so that's kind of where that is. And so um, it's kind of a prose statement, but there's a little bit of poetic in it when it talks about they'll wander in the land dejected and hungry. When they look toward the earth and see only distress, darkness, and gloom, they'll be driven to thick darkness. It's going to get even worse for them. So, poetically speaking, it describes any people who reject the way of the Lord and are living in spiritual darkness. If there's no God, there's no hope. If there's no hope, there's no light. And if there's no light, there is no peace. If you start blaming people and the authority over you, then eventually you'll blame God. And if you are the people of God, that's not a good place for you to be, is to blame God. When people blamed God for things without understanding why it had happened to them throughout history, you end up not understanding it all, and you end up in a pretty dark place. But then we come to Isaiah chapter 9, and first we look at verses 1 through 5, and this comes back then into a prose kind of writing, more of a descriptive rather than a poetic. And so the prophet says, nevertheless, and there are many who say this verse 1 of chapter 9 might have gone better, what we just read at the end of chapter 8, but it's maybe a good bridge or maybe a good link into what God is about to say through the prophet. Nevertheless, the gloom of the distressed land will not be like that of the former times when he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. Who were they? Well, they were two of the northern tribes, the sons of Jacob, Zebulun, Naphtali. They were way up in the north. They were up against Syria, where Syria is, and even on north in there. And they had already been pretty much brutally taken care of. They'd been attacked, and they didn't have much left. It says then in the future, he will bring honor to the way of the sea, to the land east of the Jordan, and to the Galilee of the nations. And so while those northern tribes have already been sacked, they've pretty much been taken care of and destroyed, the day is coming when things are going to get better. And he gives a scope of how that's going to be. The land east of the Jordan and the Galilee of the nations. There's hope, isn't there? There's hope on the way. And then he says in verse 2, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. Now we go more back to a poetic type of a description here. A light has dawned on those living in the land of darkness. You have enlarged the nations and increased its joy. The people have rejoiced before you as they rejoice at harvest time and as they rejoice when dividing spoils. For you have shattered their oppressive yoke and the rod on their shoulders, the staff of their oppressor, just as you did on the day of Midian. For every trampling boot of battle and the bloodied garments of war will be burned as fuel for the fire. So let's just kind of look at this a little bit here. And the writer in the commentary that we use for Sunday school, he has said, first we said no, N-O God. N-O, peace. But in this section, he says K-N-O-W, God, and K-N-O-W, peace. If you know God, then you will know his peace. So we get that transitional. Then the future, something's good is going to happen. And then these people walking in darkness have seen a great light. Well, he's already said that your people in darkness, they haven't heard from God. You're not even going to seek God to know as their leader, as their authority, as their king, but not even as a spiritual advisor. But he said the day's coming when they will see a great light. Light has dawned on those living in the land of darkness. Isn't that a great promise? That it was historically true for them. Eventually, while they did not obey and they were taken off into captivity, eventually many returned. But it's an even greater promise for us today that when we are broken, when we are in darkness, when we feel separated from God and his grace and his purpose and plan, that we can claim a promise like this, that even though we are in the darkness, if we seek him, he will bring us back into the light. What a great thing that is for us to know. Verse 3, you've enlarged the nation. You've increased its joy. In other words, God's not going to just keep a small remnant of people. They will continue to be fruitful and prosper. And out of that, they will find a genuine joy. Why? Because they K-N-O-W, God. Therefore, they know his peace. And so out of that gloom and out of that darkness, he's going to give them a light. It'd be like harvest time. When you see the abundance and the bounty of things, it'll be like when you have defeated your enemy and you see the spoils that they left, and now they are your possession. You now own them. It will be like those who have had their oppressive yoke shattered, the rod on their shoulders, the staff of the oppressor. Those are some interesting terms, aren't they? They're three kind of metaphorical statements, aren't they? They could be literal. They could actually mean that these are forces that people have done, instruments that they've used against them. But they also could be metaphors that it's about the burden that's been laid on the people of God, like overtaxation, dominance, hard labor. Midian references Midian there. Midian is a perfect example of how God accomplished the same kind of victory in them in Judges 6 and 7. While they had been oppressed, he was able to bring them out of that and restore them. So those are just some good things that God is doing. When it talks about the trampling boot of battle and the bloody garments of war, would it be the bloody garments of their soldiers? Perhaps. Would it be the bloody garments of those that they had defeated and that they had taken captive or taken prisoner? Perhaps. Either way, the things of war and the reminders of war, like bloody uniforms or bloody clothing, they're going to use those to fuel the fire. In other words, we're gonna forget war. We're gonna move past it. We're gonna enter into a time of peace. Okay. And we learn then in the next verses that it's going to be connected with the coming of a child. So we get to verse 6, and this is a promise made and it's a promise kept. We can look back in the Old Testament and say, well, those are good promises. And then we look to the New Testament and we say, promise kept. God kept his word. And we even look today, even still, we're looking in the scriptures and saying, God made that promise. He has kept it in us. Verse 6, a child will be born to us. A son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. The dominion will be vast, and its prosperity will never end. He will reign on the throne of David and over his kingdom to establish and sustain it with justice and righteousness from now on and forever. The zeal of the Lord of armies will accomplish this. And so there's the promise. And the promise in the prophecy is not only for now, but there are the then fulfillments as well, aren't there? The now was a taste of the affirmation, but the then is the fulfillment of the great hope to come. And so, was there a child that came along and was born in their day? Perhaps it was a contemporary, something that they would have referenced and said, "Oh yeah, that's true, that's real, that came out of a good promise." But the real child, as we look back on it, we believe was the one that we celebrate the birth of at Christmas, the one who was born of a virgin in the manger of Bethlehem, the one who came and lived in obedience to the Father in his whole life, and then laid down his life sinless as the perfect sacrifice for the sins of mankind. He's the one that we believe this is the child. And good old Handel, he wrote his Messiah, his big cantata on one of the key songs is in this verse, in the ancient manuscripts, while Handel said, "Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace," Wonderful Counselor is really a hyphenated word. It's like a combined or a combination word. Probably not meant to be separated. Wonderful Counselor. Wonder, when we think about the wonder of God, and we think about how the root of that word is that it's beyond our comprehension. There's a wonder in that. We can't even begin to understand who or how or what God is. There's a wonder in that. So there's that wonderful Counselor. He is full of all that kind of wonder. Our minds can't even begin to comprehend. And he will be born. This child will be born to us. He will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. That kind of talks about his position, doesn't it? The fact that he is going to be given to us, Jesus said in John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave. Who was the giver? God was. God's the one who gives it. And he's going to have a position where the government will be on his shoulders. He will have the authority of God the Creator over all things. He will be Wonderful Counselor. He will be one who gives counsel that we don't understand, other than he is the one who knows it. He is the one who has it. He will be the mighty God. He will be the strong and powerful warrior. That's a kind of a warrior type description there. He will be the eternal Father. And isn't that interesting? He comes as a child, as a man, but yet he will be the eternal one. A child who will be capable of protecting and providing like a father. And yet he will grow to be one whose existence will never end because he's already existed from the beginning. He'll be the Prince of Peace. So those are all characteristics of who he is. The Hebrew word for peace, shalom, includes with it the idea of completeness, soundness, safety, tranquility, prosperity, wholeness. And so, when Hebrews, or the Jewish people, hear them use the term shalom, that's what you should think of is they are blessing you with completeness, or that's a greeting for them. They say shalom, and that's what they are wishing for you, or what they believe God can give to you in your life. And when Jesus was born, the angels sang peace on earth, goodwill to men. And Jesus, in John 16, he gave instructions to the disciples about his peace. In John 14:27, he says, my peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world gives. Let not your heart be troubled, and neither let it be afraid. So this child, he contrasts with other kings and other rulers. His dominion will be vast. It will be prosperous beyond end. He will reign on the throne of David and over the kingdom of David. He will establish it. He will sustain it with justice and righteousness from now on and forever. And then the zeal of the Lord of armies. That term, the Lord of armies, just talks about the mighty force or the mighty authority of God. That there's no armies that could ever go against him and defeat him. And he is the one in his zeal, or in his, sometimes the word zeal is better translated jealousy. In his jealousy, he will not allow this to be anything but what has been prophesied. Well, Prince of Peace, Jesus, he has come, and we celebrate it. We are grateful. God bless y'all. See ya later. Bye.